business, and before we started, you say you've been working in this field for about 50 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got my first degree in 76, so it's approaching 50 years now.
Yeah, 50, and you've been out there back and forth trying to like be the main accountant for a lot of these businesses, right?
Yeah, I started out in corporate world. Spent 15 years or so doing that. Lots of good experience, big companies, small companies, family businesses, things like Texas Instruments and J.C. Penney's. And then in my early 40s, I hung out my own shingle and was doing accounting and taxes for small businesses, picked up doing payroll, picked up a partner, and here about 10 years ago, sold the accounting side of the business to him and kept the payroll. So now we're almost exclusively doing payroll and payroll tax consulting for small to medium-sized businesses. I got my license as a U.S. tax court practitioner, which allows me to take employment tax cases to tax court if need be. So that's a real plus.
And you're the author of like 3 ebooks, like especially in the accounting space?
4. My most current one is the Payroll book, a guide for small businesses and startups. So we wrote the book on payroll.
Interesting. So what was the reason you decided to write that?
Well, I get questions from clients and potential clients all the time. And I'm on several forums, and there's all kinds of questions, some of which to me seem very basic. And I started looking around, and there's nothing out there for the small businessman. The only equivalent thing is the payroll source from the American Payroll Association, and it's about $600. It's a little expensive for a reference book for a small business. So I said, I'll write something. I'll just dash off a book and, have it available for small businesses. Well, 2 years later... But my publicist knew somebody at Wiley, so they do all the dummies books, and so they were interested, so they published it, and because it's published by a major publishing house, it's a lot better book than it would have been had I done it myself, because they help with the proofreading, they help with the layout and the design, they did the index, thank God. So it's a much better book than it would have been. So
I'm just wondering, like, you've been doing this for 50 years, right? How do you manage to keep pace of the trends in business? Like, before, let's say back in the 70s, it was a different way of running a business compared to, let's say, now 2023.
Oh, absolutely. I remember when fax machines came in. They're now obsolete. So, yeah, I remember the original fax machine I had in the early 80s was thermal paper. And if you wanted to keep it, you had to photostat it. Otherwise, it would fade out over time. So, yeah, technology has changed. But I get newsletters. I get updates. I read trade journals. I'm an avid reader. So I read a lot of things. I get several emails, updates from the IRS every week on different aspects. Trade journals from the Payroll Association, from the AICPA, so on and so forth, from the tax court. So I'm constantly reading and keeping up on things, and it keeps me young, it keeps me fresh, and it's fun. I like to learn new things. I'm a lifetime learner, so nothing's ever wasted. I enjoy learning.
Yeah, because you mentioned with your recent book, your guide to like small business and startups, right? Startups operate in a very unique fashion. Like if you were to do it in a way back in the 70s, it would not be the same thing as how the measurement goes, how everything goes. Like in what way were you able to adjust your accounting skills to it? Well,
obviously I started my own business more than 30 years ago. So I understand startups, and I deal with them all the time, particularly when I was in the accounting space. Now in the payroll space, I deal on the payroll side with new businesses all the time because they need payroll. They don't understand payroll. They don't understand payroll laws. They don't understand employment law. They don't understand their responsibilities. A lot of startups, we'll just pay them as contractors. Well, that doesn't work. And 30 years ago, it was less of a problem. But with the advance of the internet and remote work, and, you can have employees anywhere in the world now. That wasn't an option 30 years ago.
Yeah, now you have to deal with with people's living situations around the world in a way, and when you're trying to factor in.
Absolutely. And it creates a lot of complexity that didn't exist when, they always work, at the next desk, okay? It's a different world, and you have to adjust to that. You have to understand it. And I work very hard at it, understanding all those aspects. Some of the aspects of the modern world, I'm an old fuddy-duddy on some things. Social media is kind of
No, don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah, it's like the funny thing is when we started the call, you were trying to ask someone for help trying to get into Zoom. So, but at least it's okay because we always need the wisdom of the accountant from way back in the old days. I mean, it's there's always a trade-off, right? Some people are very good at what they do that they don't have to be very good, like you have to be decent at other things. So it's kind of like there's like a trade-off there.
And that's something entrepreneurs need to learn is you delegate things, you backstop yourself with other people's strengths, okay? You work on your own strengths, and where you're less proficient, use other people. You know, your job is not to, as an entrepreneur, is not to be the smartest person in the room. It's to hire the smartest person in the room. Okay. Yeah. So I have technical people. I have social media people. I have sales people. I have operations people. I have a wonderful, wonderful group of people that work with me that give me strengths to be able to do things that I couldn't do on my own.
Right.
But my strength is tax law. And when it comes to dealing with the Internal Revenue Service or tax court, these guys can't do what I do. But when I have a techie question, Michael's also my videographer. Very creative young man. Creates wonderful videos that we post. We do a lot of fun videos along with a lot of serious videos.
Right.
I can't do what he does. So, you know, why would I attempt to? My biggest mistake as an entrepreneur was not to hire in marketing earlier than I did. I would be a lot richer today if I'd hired marketing a lot sooner.
But anyways, let's get to know more about Charles, the person himself. You know, you've given your insights as an accountant. I want to see more about who Charles is as a person, who he is, what made him become an accountant.
Sure. I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Iowa. Graduated from high school at 16. Was not ready to go to college. Was too immature. Joined the United States Marine Corps. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. 2 years overseas, including a combat tour in Vietnam. Came back to the States. Was stationed in Kansas City. Met and married my wife. My wife was 10 years older than I was. Had 5 children when I married her.
Really?
I claim insanity, but it worked. We were married for 45 years before she passed.
So, I thought she was your age. I thought she was around your age at first.
No, she was 10 years older than I was. She basically married herself a boy toy and raised him right. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good marriage. Wasn't perfect. Anybody who says he has a perfect marriage lies about other things.
Yeah, so there's always challenges. I mean, I'm not married yet, but still there's challenges.
You'll find them. Anyway, got out of the Marine Corps, realized that my military experience did not translate in business people's minds to business. I was a computer programmer and systems engineer, but they didn't think that my military experience was valuable. So I went to college, got my degrees, my BBA, my MBA, and while in college, found I liked accounting. So I concentrated on that, sat for and passed my CPA exam while I was still in graduate school. Went to work for Texas Instruments. Spent 15 years in the corporate world. Got really tired of working for people. I'd grown up in a family business.
Yeah.
So in my early 40s, I hung out my own shingle and started my own business. Ruth and I, my wife, started the business together and still running it today, some 30 plus years later.
Well, this is the business you're referring to, GetPayroll, or is it something else?
Well, GetPayroll is the successor. It started out as Armark Services, which was an accounting and payroll company. It was a franchise. The franchisor went belly up. We just changed the name to our corporate name and kept going. And we dealt with small businesses and startups in the Dallas area and grew. And then we put it in Payroll.
I presume you worked with Mark Cuban in his early days, right? That was just a joke.
No,
that was just a joke. But
I don't know. I know of him. Yeah. He lives in a bigger house than I do.
I mean, this was back. Let's say this were in the early, late '80s when he was building a startup. So kind of, I thought maybe he must have crossed paths somewhere.
No, he wasn't local at the time, so no, I did not meet him or his partner at that point. But I've run across him in other things since, so obviously people see him on TV.
Yeah.
But no, I dealt with a lot of small businesses and had a lot of fun, and it was a great learning experience, and it got me a lot of experience in dealing with small businesses and startups, which has served me well over the years. And we just kept growing, and then, as I said, I sold off the accounting portion to my partner that I'd taken on and kept the payroll side and have been pushing that for the last 10 years and growing it. We're a national firm. We operate in all 50 states.
Right.
So it's a good business and we continue to grow.
So what is the big vision that you're trying to create with GetPayroll?
Well, we're continuing to grow. I'm 73 now. And so I'm growing the business. It's going to the employees when I retire. I'm not going to sell it off to one of the majors. My people help me make it what it is and give me a very nice living and a very nice retirement plan. So they need to profit from it. So it's going to the employees when I retire. So we're continuing to grow it to give them a legacy. And that's where we're going with it. We want to make it a lot bigger and a lot more profitable. So they can have the finer things in life and ownership and enjoy life like I had.
Yeah, so it's like it's what you call, you're trying to build your own, what I call a family business, but not like meant for the family, but it's meant for your, like, a legacy.
Right, my children aren't interested in it, and they didn't help me build it. So why would I give it to them or the grandkids? My staff helped me build it. They deserve it more than anybody else.
And so, what was the overall experience like in terms of running GetPayroll? Like when you start, like you said, you built this as like a separate division in 2014. That's why when I saw in your profile that you built it as a separate division, but now this is more like you're trying to service small businesses and startups with basically with payroll related stuff, right?
Exactly.
So tell me about like the whole intricacies of providing payroll services to these startups, to these companies.
Well, a lot of startups particularly don't understand what they're supposed to do. The laws, the regulations, how to deal with the IRS, how to deal with the state, how to register, what numbers they need, what forms they need, and so on. It's a very complex industry. A lot of entrepreneurs, well, I'll just pay them cash. Well, all these people that are helping them, well, you can't do that. I'll just treat them as contractors. Well, you don't get to do that. They're either contractors or they're employees based on the law. You don't get the choice. They don't get the choice. Now, if you're careful and you consult with an expert, you may be able to structure the relationship so it's a contractor. But if you don't do it right, the IRS says they're an employee and all those taxes you didn't collect and pay are now due to the IRS plus penalties and interest. Okay? So there's a lot of things involved. What level of compensation? What compensation you have to take? If you're a corporation, and you work in the business, you're an employee. Period.
Like, do you when you work with these people, like, do you structure the payment system for them, or they try to figure it out and then consult with you before in terms of doing that?
Normally, they've tried to do something and then come to me. If they come to me early on, a few do, I'll sit down with them as a CPA and show them what they need to do to make it work easily, efficiently, effectively, and inexpensively. Okay? There's ways to do this cheap that'll work. There's ways to do it expensive that don't work. So, it's a matter of they don't know what they don't know. So if they'll sit down with me or give me a call, I'll walk them through a lot of things and show them what needs to be done. I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. It's fun.
Like, do you see people? So do you feel like there's a lot of difference in terms of servicing like an established small business versus a startup versus a large corporation? Because
of course.
Yeah.
Because a large corporation has somebody like me on staff, okay, that they're paying well into six figures to oversee that's knowledgeable and experienced and has all the expertise and the reference materials and the contacts to do that. A startup doesn't. An entrepreneur's wearing all the hats, and he's got to move some of those off and delegate some of that to people. And that's what we do is we allow him to outsource payroll, and we guarantee compliance. So he doesn't have to worry about it. We file all the forms, pay all the taxes, do everything for him. He doesn't have to think about it.
Yeah, even for small businesses, you try to be helping out with payroll in general, because they're the ones that they have way too much to lose in a way. Like out of all the three classes of businesses, that's what I kind of call them, like large corporation, small business, or startup. I feel like small business is more like the one that has like the most to lose but a lot to gain in a way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Amazon gets fined $100 million. It's nothing. Okay, an entrepreneur gets fined $10,000. It may put him out of business.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's very important for the entrepreneur and the startup to be on the right side of things and not get sideways with the taxing authorities, because they don't care that you're a startup. They just want their money. They're the worst collection agencies in the world. They don't give a damn. Okay, you're just a number and they don't care. And we have a lot of clients that are just solo entrepreneurs. We have
you ever worked
of them? They're just one person.
Like, have you worked with entrepreneurs that are more structural minded versus vision minded?
Oh, of course. I mean, you talk about engineers or accountants, they tend to be very analytical and very, down the line.
Yeah, because you've noticed they're the ones that are, I think when they're analytical, that's when they're the ones that get freaked out about, like, how much am I paying my employees properly? Because if it's just someone with a big vision, they only care about the vision, that's when they have a different way of doing things compared to someone who's like, who cares about their employees, who wants to pay them well and all.
Yeah, you get the entrepreneur that has this idea for this app that's going to change the world, and he's going to be a unicorn and make $1 billion, and paying payroll correctly is not part of this thing from his mind.
Yeah, but what in a way that is true though, right? Like, you've dealt with those kinds of like owners, or those kinds of business owners versus those real entrepreneurs versus just like someone who's starting out just a simple venture in a way.
And we get all kinds. I mean, we have the housewife who has a side gig. We have people who've taken their 401k and bought a franchise. We've got young people who have a whole idea for software. We have all kinds of clients, and they're all fun and they're all interesting.
And so who are someone like, do you have like a particular type of client that you work with that makes up the vast majority of GetPayrolls?
Small business. Our average client size is like 7 employees. We have a large number of people who are solo entrepreneurs. It's just them. They haven't grown and hired people yet. But we have dog groomers, engineers, lawyers, doctors, dentists, restaurants. We had a prophet at one point in time. I had a prophetic center over here in one of the suburbs. We get all kinds of clients. If they have employees or they have a corporation and they work in it, they're a potential client, and we'd love to talk to them.
Got it. And so what do you feel like are the major challenges for businesses when they're implementing payroll for their employees?
Knowing the difference between an employee and a contractor, and then knowing what they have to pay, when they have to pay it, and what forms they have to file. And that's why we do all that for them. They can come to us and say, okay, I'm hiring Sally and I'm going to pay her $1,000 a week. That's about it, and we can handle it from there, okay? They don't have to worry about, we'll tell them what they need to do with the state, to tell them what they do with the federal government. We'll set all that up for them, and then we file all the forms, make all the deposits, do the W-2s at the end of the year, and when the IRS sends a letter because they made a mistake, we handle that. Because we take a 2848, a limited power of attorney from every client that allows us to deal directly with the IRS on their behalf.
Yeah,
we can advocate for them.
Yeah, you basically kind of overwhelm me right there, because there's just too many. There's just way too many, too many factors you got to factor in if you just want to pay one person this amount of money.
It's not that simple, but we can make it that simple. You tell us you want to pay Sally or Joe $1,000 a week, we'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, because that was seriously, all you got to do is just give them $1,000. Why do you need to go through all this hoops and all these loops and hurdles and everything?
Well, the Congress has to have a way to give away tax breaks to the rich, so they got to have the money, and so they're going to collect the taxes.
I think someone once said that, it is always the taxpayers or the middle class that pay the most taxes. In a way, the poor don't pay, but the rich to get tax breaks, and the middle class has to basically pay it all.
There's a lot more middle class than there are rich, so yeah.
But in
employment tax particularly.
Yeah. And so in the coming years, what do you feel like are the challenges in this industry, particularly with?
Well, obviously technology changes and we adapt to that. We were very early in the internet, very early with green payroll and other things, but the law changes constantly. Okay, Congress passes laws all the time. 75% of all U.S. federal revenue comes through payroll as withholding or taxes. Social Security and Medicare are all funded with employment taxes. So every time they change anything, they change the law dealing with payroll and payroll taxes. So it's a constant ongoing change that you have to be aware of. And if you're not, and if you don't keep up on it, I also used to be a stockbroker and carried a 7 and 66 securities licenses.
Yeah.
I gave that up because I couldn't keep up with that and with the tax side. I had to choose. I couldn't keep up with both of them. You can't keep up with everything. An entrepreneur in their business, the analogy I use is Pele, who's just recently passed. When I grew up, was the best soccer player in the world. But if you took Pele and put him at second base in a New York Yankees uniform, he would be totally lost.
Yeah,
He wouldn't know the game.
PLA would not fit that
Right.
environment.
So you take an entrepreneur who knows what his business is successful, is taking care of clients, is creating a business, and you say, now go deal with the IRS. They're Pele at second base. They got no idea what to do. We do.
Yeah, and in a way that, because my other question was going to be like, if let's say, why do people have this notion that entrepreneurs have to be able to do everything on their own? I mean, you've been in this business for 50 years, right? You've been an entrepreneur, you've been an accountant, you've been a CPA, you've done everything. Like, why do you feel like there's this expectation on people to be the jack of all trades and everything?
Because entrepreneurs tend to think they can do everything. Okay, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to create and I'm going to grow. I can do it better, faster, cheaper, smarter than these people can. I can be successful. And that leads to some hubris, okay? Particularly if you are successful. Hey, everything I touch turns to gold. I can deal with the IRS. Yeah, right.
And then you get your ass whooped by the IRS.
Exactly. So, and I have. So it's the mindset of an entrepreneur leads to those kinds of problems. We think we can do it all. And in many cases, we can do a lot more than people think we can, but we can't do everything. I learned when I hired my first marketing manager, in 2 weeks, she proved to me that I couldn't market my way out of a paper bag. And that was my biggest mistake. So we all have blind spots. We all have deficiencies. We all have places we're weak in, and we need to backstop that. And that's why we outsource things. I don't make my own clothes. I don't build my own car. I don't even mow my own lawn. I outsource all that.
Imagine if you just did it all. Imagine if you were Superman and you just did it all yourself.
Well, I hope he's a good car designer, because I sure love my car.
Like a vintage car, right? Or
it's more than I should buy, but I enjoy it,
All right. So another one I wanted to ask is, let's just say in the coming years with these businesses. I mean, there's businesses keep changing, laws keep changing. Let's say you're still alive in the next 30 years. And you still want to continue being a CPA. I know you said you're 73 years old, but still, there's always like life expectancies like skyrocketing everywhere around the world.
Oh, hey, no, look, I tell everybody, I plan on dying at the age of 106, shot by an irate husband.
Yeah. So, do you think there is going to be changes coming in the way payroll is structured, or even let's say how businesses are structured?
Absolutely. For instance, demand pay has come in, where people get paid, if you work for Uber, you can get paid 5 times a day, okay? That's all new. I was on the IRS Advisory Council, and we were discussing that exact thing, and it's not regulated fully yet. The IRS has not set things. Crypto payroll. We do crypto payroll for clients. That allows their employees to be paid in cryptocurrency. That's all brand new. The regs are changing constantly on those things. 30 years ago, crypto payroll? Come on. It wasn't even a concept. We actually pay people in crypto. Okay, we're the first payroll service bureau to be able to do so for our clients. So yeah, things are changing and are going to continue to change. And we try and stay on the cutting edge of it.
Like, how do you, it must be overwhelming in a way, right? Just trying to keep up with so many different trends happening in these. Like, let's just say if we were living during your childhood days in the 50s, or 60s, that would be like, it would be so, life would have been like kind of simple. It was like, okay, all you got to do is just process through a document and that's about it.
It was simpler in a lot of ways. There was less complexity. Look, I was telling somebody the other day, when I grew up, we had U.S. mail delivery to the house twice a day. Okay. Yeah. So the world has changed. We used to have we used to have milk and bread delivered to the house. The world changed and continues to change.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we see it. I presume in the next coming years, basically food is just all, it's food. Basically the groceries are already hand delivered to you anyways. With these
going back to delivering milk and bread to the house. That's what's happening.
But you won't have suppliers. You just have another middleman between the supermarket and yourself.
Yeah. So the world changes, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's always complexity. There's always rules. There's always law. The IRS is always after their taxes. So yeah, things change and are going to continue to change. And if you don't keep up on it, you're going to get run over. As an entrepreneur, you have to know what's happening in your industry, but you don't have to know what's happening in employment tax if you hire somebody like us.
And you work with a lot of people resistant to change in a way, right?
Oh, some, absolutely. Yeah. Some are very resistant to change. They don't tend to be entrepreneurs. Yeah. Okay? Most of the people that are entrepreneurs are change-oriented. They want to change things. They embrace the change. So it's the nice thing about working with entrepreneurs. When you work in the corporate world, you get a lot of not in my backyard, not invented here. We've always done it this way. When I worked in the corporate world.
Like when I was a kid back in the 50s, life was so easy.
Well, to a kid, life is easy. So that's all you know. So yeah. But
we didn't have all this growing in our early days of our career. Why is it so complicated now? You have those kinds of grumbling.
Yeah, but my grandmother said the same thing. So it's a generational thing. We always think that the youth is going to hell in a handbasket. Life used to be simpler because that's what and change is difficult. But entrepreneurs tend to embrace change, which is good.
And so now I think we're going to wrap up this interview. We're running out of time. But one last question is, since you've been here for a long time, for 73 years, like what is the one piece, what is that one thing that keeps you going even now?
I love people. I love business. I love helping people. We help people every day. We make their life simpler, less expensive. We keep them out of trouble. That's fun. I like dealing with clients. I like solving problems. I'm a problem solver by nature. So that's what makes the world fun for me, is solving problems for people.
And what is one piece of advice would you give to everyone out there?
Okay, two things that I normally give. One is for entrepreneurs and business people. Very simple. There's never a traffic jam on the extra mile. If you'll go the extra mile for your clients, you'll be amazed because your competitors won't. And the other thing is what I stole from Bill Gates. People will overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade.
Yeah.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You've got to be prepared for the long term.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Cool, Charles. Thank you so much for being part of the Next Time podcast. And hopefully these next 30 years in the next 30 years, GetPayroll is more of basically the premier place for payroll advice.
That's where we're going. Thanks.
Right, thanks.